Lawrence, no better day to have you on the Fantasy Football Happy Hour as we transition to Kyle Pitts. Yeah. I don't even need to tee you up for this one. Take it away, Lawrence.
Listen, me and Matthew Berry put way too much damn effort into that video. You want to win? Put Kyle Pitts in. Let him know, big dog.
Tell you what you didn't win. The hearts of America. The hearts of Falcons fans.
For him to sink back down to one catch for 25 yards, Marcus Mariota threw an interception against the Browns with 7 minutes left in the third quarter. They threw one pass after that. They threw one pass after that. They said, no, no, no. Like you said, we're going to run the piss out the ball, and they did it.
Fantasy Football Happy Hour with Matthew Berry, served by Applebee's.
The voice you heard is the voice of a national treasure, my friend Lawrence Jackson at Lord Don't Lose from yesterday's Happy Hour. Shana Tova to all of my friends out there. Thank you so much, Jay Croucher, Connor Rogers, Lawrence Jackson, Pat Crane for filling in for me. It is the Fantasy Football Happy Hour. It's noon on Peacock, but it is 5 o'clock somewhere, Jay. And you know what today is?
Love Hate Day.
Today is Love Hate Day, but it is also Kyle Pitts' birthday.
Oh, happy birthday,
It is also Kyle Pitts' birthday. As the Falcons tweet this out, retweet and help us wish our guy at Kyle Pitts a happy birthday. Can't imagine what the mentions are under that. I wouldn't even want to look if I'm running the Falcons' social media, because you know what the Falcons need to give Kyle Pitts for his birthday?
Some targets?
How about some targets? How about some routes? How about some passes? How about a touchdown in the United States? Did you know that Kyle Pitts, the greatest tight end prospect to come into the NFL, probably since Rob Gronkowski, if not of all time, has never in his professional career scored a touchdown in the United States? He scored one last year and it was in the London game. He's 0 for this year. Literally, how about getting him a touchdown here in America? Falcons, Arthur Smith, why do you hate America? Why do you hate America? That's all I'm asking. That's all I'm asking. Why do you hate Kyle Pitts? Why do you hate America? Why do you hate us? Why do you hate everybody? Get this. Kyle Pitts has run just 73 routes, which is 21st among tight ends. He has fewer than 3 catches and 30 yards in 3 different games this year. Think about last week. Remember how T.J. Hawkinson went off?
Yeah.
T.J. Hawkinson, 179 yards and 2 touchdowns. That's more touchdowns than last Sunday. That was what Hawkinson did, 179 and 2 touchdowns. Those 179 yards are more than Kyle Pitts has had all year long. Those 2 touchdowns are more than he has scored in his entire NFL career. T.J. Hawkinson had a better game on Sunday than Kyle Pitts has had all year. He's currently tight end 18 on the season, and honestly, when I looked it up, I had to do a double check because I thought that was too high.
Yeah,
I'm like, there's no way. I'm like, there's no way he's all the way up to tight end 18. Free Kyle Pitts.
Free Kyle Pitts.
Free Kyle Pitts.
And
Arthur Smith.
And America's Nightmare.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
Why do you love London? Why don't you love America, Arthur Smith? That's all I'm asking.
All right, let's get into some Rotoworld headlines.
Sure.
Come in hot. Day
Came
off.
in hot. Yeah, been off for a day. I have things to say.
High energy. I like
Yeah,
it.
appreciate you.
All right, Jonathan Taylor, he is out of tonight's game with the ankle suffered in Week 4 against the Titans. What are we doing? Nyheim Hines, can I interest you in any Philip Lindsay, who is active? Some Deion Jackson. What are you doing?
No, I'm probably trying to ignore this situation. If I have to start anyone in this game, it's Nyheim Hines. Could Philip Lindsay break a long one here? You know, revenge game. It's his team, the Denver Broncos. He's facing the Denver Broncos. But honestly, you know, the Broncos have a pretty good run defense so far, and we'll get more into this. But, like, you think about Nyheim Hines. I currently have running back 27. Some is a flex play. But it's worth knowing, like, he's had 20 career games, right, where he's had double-digit touches. And he's averaging 14.5 fantasy points per game. He's had 5 or more targets in 3 or 4 games so far this season, right? You know, I don't know. Like, you think about Week 12 last year when Jonathan Taylor had to miss the game because of COVID. Hines, 10 for 29, 8 receptions, 66 yards. He played on 65% of the offensive snaps. He finished as running back 10 that week. It's a tough run defense, and the offense isn't looking as good this year, I should say, as it did last year. But Hines should get the majority of the work. You'll see some Lindsay. I don't mind Lindsay if you're playing a 1-game slate on DFS, but otherwise, you know what I mean? This short week, bad matchup, who knows? Yeah, I think you'll see some Deion Jackson. Nothing about the Colts offense has given you confidence that they're going to be able to move the ball in any way other than Michael Pittman. And Michael Pittman has a tough matchup tonight as well.
Yep, against Pat Surtain. Yeah, I think the beneficiaries of this, it's not, I mean, Nyheim Hines obviously benefits, but it's more about the passing game work. You'd expect that they're going to throw more. They're not going to run Nyheim Hines 20 times like they do Jonathan Taylor each week.
3 straight games, Jonathan Taylor, who we all agree is objectively better than any of the other running backs we've just mentioned, hasn't gotten to 75 rushing yards in 3 straight. So I think, again, Hines is a viable flex play. If you are desperate for a running back, I think there are better upside plays than Philip Lindsay.
Yep. The least efficient rushing offense in the NFL to date, the Indianapolis Colts, despite having Jonathan Taylor. All right, next headline. DeAndre Swift, Amon-Ra St. Brown, DJ Chark, Josh Reynolds, all not practicing Wednesday. The line right now is Detroit +3 against the great Bailey Zappi, which means that BetMGM and the market, they don't think that all of these guys are going to be playing, that Detroit are going to be seriously shorthanded. What are you doing with the Detroit situation?
I'm waiting and see. I mean, I think Jeremy Fowler reported earlier today that the expectation here is that Swift will once again miss this week. They have the bye next week, right? And then the week after is when Swift will come back. We'll see what happens with the Sun God here. And, Josh Reynolds has obviously played last week. It's a Wednesday practice. Mentioning just to note, hey, keep an eye on this situation, but we'll know more as we get through Thursday, Friday, and obviously these are all subjects that we will talk about extensively Sunday morning fantasy football happy hour. I'm sorry, fantasy football pregame.
Yeah.
I have to get my drinking shows straight. Fantasy football pregame, Sunday morning, 11 a.m. Eastern. Me, you, Michael Smith, and a cast of thousands right here on Peacock.
Indeed. Okay. Jameis Winston with the transverse fracture in his back, which apparently doesn't heal in a week.
No.
He was not spotted at practice. Andy Dalton against the Seattle defense, which is not very good. Any interest in Andy Dalton as a streaming option?
Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping that Winston makes his way back here. But when you think about the fact that the Seahawks, they're allowing an NFL high 9 yards per pass attempt. Each of the last 2 games, Winston has thrown for over 40 yards. Dalton looked decent against the Vikings last week again, and maybe they get Michael Thomas back. They are expected to get Alvin Kamara back, so whether it's Dalton or Winston under center, they'll have more weapons available to them in a great matchup at home against the Seahawks. So if you're looking for streaming options, I think New Orleans is a place to look. We will see as the week goes on whether it's going to be Winston or Dalton.
Michael Thomas also not practicing. If he doesn't go, any interest in any New Orleans receiver outside of Chris Olave? Can I interest you into Marquez Callaway, who got 6 targets?
I could see some Jarvis Landry being okay here. I feel better about it with Winston than Dalton. But again, if you are desperate, given the matchup is at home. I mean, Seattle is at home. Seattle is on the road at New Orleans. Saints are at home. So, yeah, it could be. I could see him as kind of a wide receiver 4.
Okay.
With some upside, yeah.
I like it. All right, let's jump into some running back love-hate. I'm told we have a new animation.
Look at this. All the work of Steven D'Agostino. Nice job, Steven.
Well done, Steven.
Appreciate that.
That's
very well done.
Years of work. All right.
From what I understand, Brian Rubin did not contribute to that at all.
Nothing.
He
from
fought
Brian
against
Rubin.
it. He wanted the old, boring, lame animation, and Steven fought the good fight. Nice job, Steven.
Thank you, Steven. All right. Aaron Jones, first guy on the list.
I have no idea if any of that's true, by the way. I just like torturing Brian Rubin, who I love. I love
whipping
Brian.
boy.
B. Rubes, wherever you are, I love you. You know that. All right. Aaron Jones, free Aaron Jones. The fact, I think this might be a week that he is free. This is the London game this week. They are playing the New York Giants. 2 of the last 3 games, Aaron Jones has gotten 18 or more touches. He might be finally free. He's had at least 3 receptions in every single game. He's averaging 6.8 yards per carry so far this season. He's had over 115 total yards in the games where he's gotten over 15 touches here. And so in a matchup with the Giants where, this has been somewhat of a conservative offense, I think, look, they're favored in this game. The Packers are. I think they'll be in positive game script. They'll be able to run at will. So I like both Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon against a New York team that's allowed the 4th most rushing yards to opposing running backs per game this season. Aaron Jones, top 10 play for me this week.
8.5-point favorites in London, the Packers, so they will have the game script we expect. And also for all the concerns about the passing game, it's been a really efficient rushing offense in Green Bay, and I think Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon, obviously you're just starting them every single week. Okay, Jeff Wilson, next guy on the love list.
Yeah, he's a top 20 guy for me. Okay, so since Elijah Mitchell went down, Jeff Wilson Jr. has at least 70 yards from scrimmage in every game that he's played. All 3 games since Elijah Mitchell went down in week 1. Last 2 games, he's handled almost 90% of the running back snaps for the 49ers. Feels like San Francisco is really like, hey, we're good with Jeff Wilson. We'll sprinkle in some Deebo Samuel. Whatever, they had Tevin Coleman up last week. But let's be clear. In the 3 games that Jimmy Garoppolo has started, San Francisco's 7th in the NFL in rush rate. They don't want Jimmy G throwing. No. They want him handing off. They want him running the ball. And it's a nice matchup with Carolina as teams facing the Panthers so far this year, averaging 25 running back carries per game. That is tied for 5th most in the NFL. We expect a good workload, a heavy workload, and a good matchup for Jeff Wilson Jr. Top 20 play for me this week. He makes the love list.
Yeah, you mentioned Jimmy G looking shaky. I mean, it was an impressive win against the Rams, but Jimmy didn't look fantastic. That touchdown.
Hey. He always looks fantastic.
Yeah, he does.
He didn't play well.
That's true.
But he's a very handsome man.
Even
I'm like,
Yeah. He's
I'd think about it.
Uncomfortably handsome, Jimmy G.
I'd think about it.
Yeah.
I'm just saying this. I don't think he's making a pass at me, but if he did, it's not an immediate no. I'm just putting it out there. He's a good-looking dude.
Wonder what the market is on Jimmy G to make a pass at Matthew Berry at some point in the next 100 years. About 100 to 1.
It's about 100 to 1.
Yeah.
What's more likely? Him making a romantic pass at me or an NFL pass to me?
NFL pass, might be more implied.
I don't know. Have you seen my 40 time? I am slow as molasses. I was going to say a different word there, but I want to save Alexa's job.
The pass, the touchdown pass to Deebo Samuel, that was very nearly a pick six.
I'm right. And then Deebo's like, all right.
Yeah, it's all me.
Yeah, all bubble screens from here on out for Jimmy G.
They got the best defense in the league, and I think it's going to be an old school defense rushing team going from here on out. Okay.
100% agree.
Next guy, James Robinson, coming off a tough week against Philadelphia. Seems like you're not concerned about that. He's on the love list.
Yeah, he's at home this week against Houston. I also have him again as a top 20 play. Comes in at running back 17 as we sit here on Thursday morning. First off, you like the matchup with the Texans, right? 2nd most rushing touchdowns allowed to running backs this year. The most rushing yards allowed to running backs so far this year. Teams facing the Texans are averaging 28 running back carries per game. That's 2nd most in the NFL. You can run on the Houston Texans. You think about the last 2 games, they've allowed 5 touchdowns to running back. The Houston Texans have. Austin Eckler got off the schneid last week against Houston. Yeah. And those weren't cheapies. No. All those were like rushing touchdowns from 10 yards or more out for Eckler. So I think James Robinson, who has handled 63% of the Jags running back carries so far this season, including almost 70% of the red zone touches, should have a heavy workload here. And Travis Etienne is a viable flex in this one, but I really like the workload that Robinson's getting at home as a home favorite. I actually kind of like by the way, if you play in Survivor leagues, I like Jacksonville this week.
Absolutely.
Right? I mean, you're not really going to feel great about using them. So this is their home game against Houston.
Yep.
And Houston's played plucky, but still, after the butt kicking in Philadelphia, I think the Jags bounce back and have a nice game in Florida.
I think so too. And look, the Jags now favorites in the AFC South, division favorites, the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Your preseason call as best bet was, I believe, the Jags at plus 700?
Yeah, plus 700.
100 to win the division.
Yeah, now
it's looking great.
Yeah, plus 170 range. And look, this is the first game all season that Jacksonville have been favored in, despite the fact they've already got a couple of wins. So 7-point favorites, you would expect that, this is a team when they're up, they do lean on the run a lot. Doug Peterson likes to do that, and I think, you can support both of those running backs in your lineup, Robinson and Etienne. Okay, some other guys receiving votes. Both of the New England running backs, Breece Hall. What do you like about these guys?
So Stevenson and Harris, whoever's under center for the New England Patriots, they're going to be handing off against a Lions team that's allowed 120 rushing yards and multiple rushing touchdowns to running backs in 3 of the last 4 games this season. We all saw what Rashad Penny did last week. And so Breece Hall felt like last week was sort of a Breece Hall breakout game here. Season high in touches and snap rate. He had almost 20 touches, played almost 70% of the snaps. He's had 6 or more targets in 3 or 4 games this season. He should be busy against the Dolphins. You see Kareem Hunt there on your screen as well. He's had at least 12 touches in every game this year. The floor is really high for Kareem Hunt. Remember, the Chargers allow an NFL high 6.1 yards per carry to opposing running backs and the 4th most receptions allowed. Hunt, they use more in the passing game, obviously, than Nick Chubb. And then finally, we talked about Nyheim Hines at the top of the segment here. We expect him to be the busiest of the Colts running backs, and the fact that he is involved in the passing game should be beneficial. Because they haven't been able to run the ball that effectively, the Colts.
No. Breece Hall's the interesting one to me because he's the guy who's got extraordinary upside, even in that Jets offense. He's plus 1,400 to win Offensive Rookie of the Year right now. I don't agree with that. I think he should be almost the favorite because just the gap between him and the other running backs outside of Dameon Pierce is so big. And I just think that the Jets offense will be better than Houston's going forward. But Breece Hall definitely a guy to watch.
The question was never the talent. The question was was the usage going to be there? And starting to get there, they need to figure out what they're doing offensively. Excuse me. And I've been talking a lot all today. So anyway, just that's the idea right there with Hall. That with Zach Wilson now under center, the expectation is that he is going to start once again. He's been a little bit banged up, but I think Breece Hall, it is starting to become his backfield.
For sure. All right, let's jump to the hate list, starting with Ezekiel Elliott, who I think that we might see on this list more throughout the season just because of the situation with him and Pollard. Why specifically this week?
Well, listen, when you have a future Hall of Famer in Cooper Rush, why are you going to take the ball out of his hands? You're not going to. Under 55 rushing yards in 3 out of 4 games so far this season. But the problem is Ezekiel Elliott, and Tony Pollard for that fact as well, but especially Zeke, just not involved in the passing game. Only 5 receptions for the year. He's played 4 games. He's got 5 receptions. Rams is a tough matchup here. LA has yet to allow 75 yards from scrimmage to an opposing running back so far this season. They've given up the 6th fewest rushing yards to opposing running backs. So Ezekiel Elliott outside my top 20 this week. Basically, if you start Zeke, you are hoping for a touchdown because there's nothing based on his performance this year, the Cowboys' offensive play calling this year, and what the Rams have done defensively that makes you feel good about starting Ezekiel Elliott this week.
No, and we haven't seen a game yet where Cooper Rush has had to throw the ball. Like they've avoided that game script. Cooper Rush hasn't had more than 31 pass attempts in any game yet. So if that happens as well, then Zeke, the rushing attempts, could go down even further. Another guy who's about to see his rushing attempts go down is Antonio Gibson, with the return of Brian Robinson imminent. Why is Antonio Gibson on the hate list?
Well, by the way, just to show that I'm not a total homer, sometimes I will put Commanders players on the hate list. Every week this season, his snap rate has declined. Last week, Jonathan Williams came in and played well, was more effective than Gibson. He had that big game in week 1 against the Jaguars, 7 for 72 as a receiver. They were using him in the passing game. And yet in the 3 games since, just 6 catches for 29 yards total. 6 catches over 3 games, under 30 yards over 3 games total. Again, they were using more J.D. McKissick. And so if Brian Robinson, who was activated this week and has been practicing with the team, if Brian Robinson is active for this game, I think there's a chance that he vultures some touchdown opportunities there as well. Since week 1, Titans had a bad week 1, but since then, Tennessee allowing just 3.7 yards per carry to opposing running backs. That feels like they've kind of tightened up that defense.
Oh boy!
There you go. I'm back. I missed a day. God bless. 2 shows on Saturday. There you go. Thank you. Please tip your waitresses. Try the curly fries. The fact of the matter is Antonio Gibson outside my top 25 this week. Feels like this is going to be a 3-headed monster in not a great matchup. Feels like the way you attack Tennessee is through the air. I think this is a Carson Wentz game.
Wow, that's scary.
Yeah. You're talking to me?
Yeah.
Listen, it's a must-win. Commanders 1-3, and they're 2 games out of second place in the division. Yeah. Eagles undefeated, Giants 3-1. They're getting left in the dust. It's getting late early for the Commanders. So big game. I think they. I know that sounds insane, but I think they try to win this on the arm of Carson Wentz.
Oh, boy. Okay. That's terrifying. Antonio Gibson, his season-long stats aren't actually that bad, but so much of that was the receiving work he got in week 1 against Jacksonville, where for whatever reason, just he was such a big part of the passing game that week, and that's just completely dried up, and it just doesn't – he had to win this job. Even though he had to win it to prevent Brian Robinson from coming in and stealing his role. And
it was going to be prior to the shooting accident. It's not an accident. I don't know why I keep calling it an accident. But prior to that, prior to Brian Robinson getting shot, it was going to be Brian Robinson's job. Make no mistake about it. And so tragic. Luckily, it was not. The fact that Robinson is back is amazing.
Incredible.
We love that. It's a great story. But over the past 3 games, Antonio Gibson has averaged under 50 yards from scrimmage. So it's just you're hoping for a touchdown, and I think whether it's Robinson or maybe Jonathan Williams, I don't know they can count on Gibson falling into the end zone here.
Yep. Another guy you can't count on is Melvin Gordon. Certainly can't count on him holding on to the football. He's on the hate list as well.
No running back has more fumbles this year than Melvin Gordon. 2 first names, always a crowd pleaser. Coughing up the ball, not a crowd pleaser. There's only one running back that has averaged, that has gotten to 80 scrimmage yards against the Indianapolis Colts this season. Just one.
Yep.
Derrick Henry.
Yeah.
All due respect to Melvin Gordon, he is not Derrick Henry. #analysis. Colts allow 3.1 yards per carry to opposing running backs. That's the 3rd lowest rate in the NFL. He has the 4 fumbles. My sources in Denver tell me that he is on, quote, a short leash, that they're going to lean on him. I went heavy after Latavius Murray in a lot of leagues this week because my expectation here is that Mike Boone is not built to be an every down back. Like, he's more of a 3rd down guy. He's a smaller guy. Like, they're going to have to lean on Gordon tonight. I don't expect Murray to be active, and if he is, I think it's just a handful of snaps. I think you'll see Gordon and Boone and Divine Ozigbo. But it's a tough matchup. He's splitting work, right? And again, I think if he fumbles one more time, which has been a thing throughout his career and certainly a lot this year, I think they just immediately yank him, right? You know, like, he's also, by the way, he was a little bit banged up last week, which is one of the reasons why once Javonte Williams went down, Boone played more snaps than Gordon. And so, like, how healthy is he? You know, this is a short week, right? You know, they're having to go again on a short week. I don't know. I'm concerned about the usage. I'm concerned about the fumbles. I'm concerned about the matchup with the Colts. He's outside my top 25 for tonight.
Yep. The Colts haven't done much right, the Colts, this year, but they do have an elite rushing defense, 2nd in the league by DVOA, behind only San Francisco's. And I think the point is that Melvin Gordon, he's one moment away from just being done for the game, because we saw what happened last week, and maybe that was the health, but there's also the fumble and being returned for a touchdown, and then he was just done for the rest of the day, basically. And so if that happens against Indianapolis in a game that we think is going to be tight and low scoring, total's only 42.5, then I think Melvin Gordon might be done.
Look, could he fall into the end zone? Of course he could. You never know on that. But just, you know, you're playing the odds here. Just tough matchup with a questionable workload.
Yeah. I do think that
he could have a monster game. Like, he does know that the leash is short on him, and if he's running well, they're going to lean on him because they want him versus Boone. They want him to work, but so far he hasn't.
Yep. Tough matchup tonight, but rest of the season, Melvin Gordon, like, his outlook, is he a top 20 running back going forward? If you hope that the fumble issues don't sink him, because he should get the usage.
I think this is a 3-headed monster, and I mean, like I said, I think I could see a scenario where Latavius Murray becomes the Broncos running back you want to start.
Oh, boy.
Just, again, ball security is a real issue for Melvin Gordon, and that's not something that gets solved overnight. I mean, that's something it's not like it's just he's had a couple of bad unlucky games.
No.
Like, that's been an issue throughout his career.
Yep, and it's already cost them 1 game. May arguably cost them 2 games, because they would have beaten Seattle if he doesn't fumble at the goal line,
right.
And they might have beaten the Raiders without what happened last week. All right. We're going to go to break. When we come back, love-hate for pass catchers.
Hey America, would you consider, when you get a chance, possibly thinking about downloading the NBC Sports Predictor app? It's free. You get a chance to win $100,000 for free. Play the Sunday Night 7. You know, I play it, Jay plays it. Just something to think about, consider. Let it roll around in your noodle for a bit. You know, let it rattle around there just as a suggestion. Maybe that's the way to do it. Instead of you being so angry and telling them what to do.
I'll try out all different phases of Jay reading out the promo.
I was so angry.
Okay.
Who knew you had that in you?
I think we have another
promo. Look at you.
Like,
you became an American citizen, and all of a sudden now you're like angry and yelly. Like, you used to be this sweet Australian, and now you got your visa and you're over here, and you're just suddenly like,
it's different. I got to
spoiling
adjust.
movies. Like, you turning heel was not something I expected.
Turning heel.
Everyone was just like, when I first got, like, oh, we got this guy, Jay Croucher. He's so sweet, you'll love him. Yeah. And then turns out, like, you were like a sheep in wolf's clothing.
It's like when,
or a wolf in sheep's clothing.
It's like
Which
when.
is it? It's a wolf in sheep's clothing.
It's like when James Cromwell.
A wolf in a kangaroo clothing is what you were. All right, what? Go ahead.
It's like when James Cromwell turned heel in LA Confidential, which wasn't released this century. So I'm
look, another one! Yeah. Again, like, get tough.
The consensus on that is, if it's not this century, it's okay.
What consensus? Because it's between me and you, because it's not.
Like 7 people I asked, and 5 people were like, it's fine. So 5 out of 7 is consensus.
So 7 people that are friends with you that are actually prone to agreeing with you, and you couldn't even get unanimous voting on that.
Exactly. You know what I want?
The fact of the matter is 2 people are like, no, and that's like...
You know what? I'm never going to spoil TV shows, because TV shows, no matter how old they were, that's a big, it's a big investment. For instance, like, I love Better Call Saul, but I actually haven't seen all of it because I keep having children. Keep having more children, and then when you have children, it's just it's hard to watch everything. So I'll never spoil any TV shows. Did you just
low-key brag about all the sex you're having with your wife? Is that what that was? I keep having more children. My wife can't keep her hands off me. Is that what that is?
Basically.
My boys can swim. I'm so fertile over here. Just like a low-key humble brag.
Wow. The over 0.5 fertility references prop hits for the Fantasy Football Happy Hour. Yeah. All right, let's jump into some pass catches.
Yeah.
Speaking of guys that can swim.
Yeah.
T. Higgins.
Sure.
Monster game last week from T. Higgins. 9 targets, 7 receptions, 124 yards, and a tutty. He's on the love list this week.
Dude, he's played 3 full games so far this year. He's averaging almost 20 fantasy points per game. The last 2 games he played against the Ravens last season, 28 targets. And the Ravens defense isn't your father's Ravens defense.
No.
Here's a spoiler alert. They're brutal, right? They've allowed the most yards to wide receiver this season. They're tied for the 2nd most touchdowns allowed. They've allowed the most deep receptions as well. Pick a stat. They're worse. No team in the NFL through 4 weeks this season has allowed more passing yards per game than the Baltimore Ravens. This is one of the highest over-unders on the slate this week. I think a lot of points are going to be scored, and I think especially a lot of points through the air. Joe Burrow makes the love list. Hint, that's a little bit of foreshadowing. We'll talk about quarterbacks coming up. And I think T. Higgins is a top 10 wide receiver this week, easy peasy.
Yep, I like it. We've seen over and over again what speed does to this Baltimore secondary, whatever iteration it takes seemingly. We saw what Waddle and Tyreek did to them in week 2, and we saw what Jamar Chase and the Cincinnati Bengals did to them last year. So I like that, Matthew. I like that. We're aligned. All right, Chris Godwin, who looked
am I worried because I'm this close to you? Might I get pregnant by the end of the show? Is there a chance I could?
You could get pregnant, and you might find out how all these kind of movies end. Arlington Road, Life of David Gale, all these spoilers, they are
please.
in play.
Don't tell me anything.
Psycho, you know how Psycho wound up?
Yes,
you know,
that one I know.
So that one's okay. It's okay to spoil Psycho?
That one's over a century
old.
old.
Oh, wow. So it's over a century ago. But,
that's over 50 years old.
Fight Club was 1999, so that's 23 years ago.
I know,
that's
but that's not 50 years ago.
I know,
When did Psycho was released in the 50s?
It's arbitrary line. Yeah.
When is if it's older than me? I'm 52 years old, and I'm pretty sure Psycho was released. I was born in 1969. I'm almost positive Psycho was released it was like in the 50s, right?
1957 is the over-under.
Yeah, is where I would put. So I'm going to get research on that. Yes, that is the line that I've drawn. That is the Mendoza line. That is the Matthew Berry line. Released before 1969, spoil away.
Wow.
After I've been born.
Yeah. So America is subject. All of America is subject to the Matthew Berry line that's arbitrarily been set for when you can spoil movies or not.
You're on the Fantasy Football Happy Hour show with Matthew Berry. My name is in the title. Yes, I am the kingdom. This is my little fiefdom. You're damn right. Yes, I made that rule.
I am the kingdom. Quote Matthew Berry.
1,000%.
All right, we're gonna
I got an idea. Next time you think about spoiling a movie, just get romantic with your wife.
Okay.
Why don't you pump out another kid? Why don't you just do that?
Numero quattro.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
There you go. And then everyone wins. Except your poor wife.
Yeah, okay. Chris Godwin.
Yes.
Who looked suspiciously like Chris Godwin on Sunday night against the Chiefs. He looks fantastic. 10 targets, and he's on the love list.
Ran a ton of routes, obviously. They didn't feel like they were holding him back. No concerns about the injury as well. Yes, to your point, looked like Chris Godwin. Double-digit targets in his first game back, tied for the most in the team. He had 10 targets in that one. His last 4 games against the Falcons, he always kills them, right? 22.6 fantasy points per game. He scored in 3 of the last 4 against Atlanta, which, by the way, ranks bottom 3 in receptions and yards allowed to the slot this season. So, which is obviously where Godwin lines up. Full complement of receivers here, by the way. I expect Brady to have a big game this week as well. And part of the reason why is Chris Godwin will be a big part of that. I think he's an easy top 15 play this week.
Top 10 wide receiver going forward, Chris Godwin.
Yeah, borderline. He's borderline. Top 12. Yep. He's right in there. But yeah, I feel like even though they lost, that was a good game from Brady.
Yep.
And, listen, Obviously, a lot going on, a lot of headlines around him. I will just say that when people bet against Tom Brady, they lose.
Yes.
That
has been a theme. All right, Chris Olave is on the love list. He proved surprisingly Red Rocket resistant and still was able to put up a decent
Red Rifle.
Sorry,
Red Rocket is something else.
Red Rocket. What's Red Rocket?
Oh, boy.
Oh, boy.
How fired are you trying to get me? How fired are you trying to get me?
Oh, boy. All right.
How fired are you trying to get me?
Let's quickly pivot to Chris
Where are
Olave.
you, Alexa? You owe me, Alexa. Like, do you understand? Like, I could have gone in for the dunk and I dished it out for a 3. I had a clear lane to the hole. You understand what I'm talking about here? And you know what I did? Instead of laying it up, I dished it out for a 3.
Oh, boy.
For you, Alexa.
Oh, boy.
That was all for Alexa.
Right.
The Red Rifle did not disappoint.
That was unintended.
Yeah.
All right. Red Rifle resisted Chris Olave.
Yes.
He's on the love list. Why?
80 yards or a touchdown in 3 straight games. In the 2 games, his last 2 games with Jameis Winston, and right now we're hopeful that Jameis Winston plays. 26 targets, almost 500 air yards, and they're chucking it deep. Olave, again, we don't know if Michael Thomas is going to be back for this game. As of this airing broadcast, I should say, Thomas has not practiced this week. It's, this is Thursday morning, so we'll see if he practiced today, but he did not practice on Wednesday. And you love this matchup against the Seahawks, as we talked about earlier in the Rotoworld Headlines. Seahawks bottom 3 in the NFL. In receptions allowed on deep passes, on yards allowed on deep passes. They allowed 8 deep receptions on the Lions last week. They love chucking it deep to Chris Olave. I have him as a borderline top 20 play this week.
Yep, that's going to be a high-scoring game as well. The total on BetMGM, it's 46.5, which I think that could even tick up. Yeah. I like the Seahawks plus 5.5 in that game.
Interesting, okay.
I think Geno might be real. I think he might be real.
I certainly think he's as real as Winston or Dalton.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Okay, next guy, Zach Ertz, who has been a monster quietly the past 3 weeks. 20 receptions the past 3 weeks, and he's on the love list as well.
Through 4 weeks, he's the 4th best tight end in fantasy football. Double-digit targets in 2 of the last 3 games here. Among all tight ends, no one has more red zone targets this season than Zachary Ertz, who has a nice matchup against Philadelphia. Yep. You think, wait, Philadelphia's got an awesome defense. They do. But if there's one place to attack Philadelphia, it is the middle of the field, because Bradbury and Slay are so good on the perimeters. We'll see if Slay plays. He's a little banged up. But still, start your tight ends against Philadelphia. Obviously, didn't end the best way for Zach Ertz with Philadelphia, so there's a little bit of hashtag revenge game narrative going on here as well. I'm buying into the narrative. I'm also buying into his usage on this team. He comes in at tight end 6 for me this week.
Yep. Okay, some others receiving votes. We're looking at guys like Garrett Wilson, Robert Woods, George Pickens, Isaiah McKenzie, and Romeo Doubs.
Dolphins allow the 7th most yards to the slot this season, which is Garrett Wilson, where he lines up the most. He played 77% of the snaps there last week. Like Garrett Wilson against Miami. I like anyone against the Commanders, especially when all the targets are going to go for him. We don't expect Treylon Burks to play. He's got that turf toe here. So Robert Woods, who has 12 or more fantasy points now in back-to-back games, gets the Commanders, who have allowed a league-high 7 touchdowns to opposing wide receivers this year. We've talked about George Pickens a lot on this show. Once Kenny Pickett came in, it was all about George Pickens, who got a 30% target share from Kenny Pickett once he entered that game. It's not a great matchup against Buffalo, but we do expect the Steelers to have to throw. That same game, Isaiah McKenzie, let's assume that he is going to play. He's currently in the concussion protocol, but making good progress. Jamison Crowder obviously out with that broken ankle. In the three out of the 4 games he's played this year, Isaiah McKenzie has scored a touchdown. Of course, Steelers bottom 10 in the NFL in receptions and yard allowed to the slot. And Romeo Doubs. Yeah. Again, Romeo Doubs is legit. I think had he caught that second touchdown last week, that got caught on the grass, I think the narrative around him was a lot different.
Absolutely.
But it is clear that he's earning the trust of Aaron Rodgers. He looks good doing it, and you're not really scared of the Giants. So I do think he is a viable flex this week.
Yep. If he catches that touchdown, he's Offensive Rookie of the Year favorite just immediately, because that's 3 touchdowns in 2 weeks and a lot of targets. All right, let's jump into the hate side. Michael Pittman plays tonight.
Should we, going forward, should we have me do the love and you do the hate?
Because I'm such a negative, angry. Loud person.
You're right. You embrace the hate. You're like What's Australian for Darth Vader? You're like
What does that even mean?
What's Australian for evil? I'm just trying to think of a nickname for you because it's like
You speak English in Australia.
Yeah, it's like it's like Jay. It's like Jay the hate. I don't know. Negative Jay. I need nickname suggestions for you.
Negative
it's just
Jay.
Like you're just like spoiler Jay. I don't know. You're LaShawn. I should just call you Jay McCoy.
Jay McCoy.
Yeah, because you spoil like you're like
Shady.
LaShawn McCoy.
Shady. Yeah.
LeJay. Maybe I'll call you LeJay McCoy.
That's bad.
I'm workshopping it. I'm workshopping it here live on air. We'll figure it out. JD Croucher instead of,
All right.
like Shady McCoy. All right, anyway, let's get to the hate.
Michael Pittman is the first guy on the list, plays tonight and gets the tough matchup with Pat Surtain.
Yeah, and let's be clear. You're starting Michael Pittman. I have Michael Pittman in a couple leagues. I'm starting him. I'm just lowering expectations. He comes in at wide receiver 18 for me this week.
Okay.
That's the lowest I've ranked him all season. Likely the lowest I will rank him all season. Broncos have allowed one touchdown. Count them one touchdown to a wide receiver this entire year, right? They've allowed the fourth lowest catch rate to a perimeter wide receivers. They've allowed the fewest yards to perimeter wide receivers. Obviously, Pittman lines up as a wide receiver. It's a short week here. The offense looks like a mess. Now they don't even have Jonathan Taylor to help set up play action. They're gonna have to try to run Deion Jackson up the middle or Nyheim Hines. A lot of this just doesn't feel right. Pittman's super talented, and all he needs is kind of one play. And so again, if I have Michael Pittman on a number of teams, and I'm starting him in every team I have him. So I'm not sitting here saying don't start him, but I am saying lower expectations. That's what the love-hate list is all about. It's about expectations either above or below what you sort of expect. And I think this is one of his worst games of the year.
Yep. Okay, Rashad Bateman, who's kind of developing a statistical profile like Robbie Anderson at this point, where he's only got 11 receptions through 4 games, and you're basically counting on the 60-yard touchdown, or else you're not getting much out of Rashad Bateman.
Missed the fourth quarter last week with that foot injury, so is he 100% healthy heading into this game against the Bengals? We don't know. 4 or fewer catches in every game so far this year, under 60 yards in 3 or 4. He's been weirdly touchdown dependent. Now, that was Marquise Brown last year as well, and it sort of worked out. So it's okay, but it's just not a high-volume offense here. We do expect a lot of points to be scored in this game, but Bateman outside my top 30 for the week. He's just not getting the volume, and it doesn't feel like, at least as we sit here today on Thursday, that he's 100% healthy.
Yep. Elijah Moore is the next guy, and it's weird to say, but there's kind of a lot of guys who need the ball in New York. There's a lot of names between Garrett Wilson, Elijah Moore, Braxton Berrios, the rejuvenated Corey Davis, Breece Hall, Michael Carter. A lot of guys.
Make no mistake, Zach Wilson is doing his best to spread the ball around.
Great.
Singular.
Yeah.
Singular. All of you, get your mind out of the gutter. I'm just saying, the ball, one.
Yeah, the football.
The football, right?
Football.
Good clarification there.
Yep.
He is, but he likes spreading it around. Zach Wilson absolutely likes spreading it around. I think that's been asked and proven. And so the fact that Zach Wilson enjoys spreading it around, makes you concerned about Elijah Moore, who's currently 5th on the Jets in terms of targets, right? He's had under 55 yards in all 4 games this season. 0 games with double-digit fantasy points here. As you see on your screen, the game log, it hasn't been pretty for Elijah Moore. To your point, you feel better about Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall, Tyler Conklin, Corey Davis in the passing game than you do about Elijah Moore. We love the talent. We don't love the role so far. And until we see it, it's hard to trust him as a starter, especially in a tough matchup against a Dolphins team that will be looking to get back on the winning track.
Absolutely. Okay, Dalton Schultz, who's going up against another team that's looking to get back on the winning track in the Rams. He's on the hate list.
Rams have allowed the fewest yards to opposing tight ends so far this season, the 3rd lowest catch rate to the position. Like, they defend the tight end pretty well, and I like Dalton Schultz, and I like Dalton Schultz with Cooper Rush, but they've gotten Michael Gallup back. There's a connection there with Noah Brown. Obviously, CeeDee Lamb is going to get fed here. In the 2 games that Dalton Schultz has played with Cooper Rush, he has 2 catches for 18 yards.
Yep.
Over 2 games. Merely 7 targets. So, he's averaging 3.5 targets a game. It just, I don't know. He's somebody that I would avoid until we see Dak Prescott back. He's tight end 15 for me this week.
Yeah, I think the one thing there is that, like we said, Cooper Rush hasn't had to really throw the ball in high volume. And so if this is a game, they're 5.5-point underdogs to the Rams, who so expect that they will need to throw. And maybe if Rush he finally has a 40 passing attempt game, then maybe Dalton Schultz gets a bit more involved. But yeah, not much to like so far. Okay.
Who do you think likes to spread it around more, Zach Wilson or you?
Oh, well, Zach Wilson, I would certainly hope.
Yeah, I guess so. You are married.
Yeah,
you are married. That's fair.
Yeah.
It's very fair. I don't want your. Yeah, I know your wife watches the show. I don't want. He's a very devoted husband. I do not want to cast any aspersions there. I want to be very clear about that. You are a very devoted husband. You talk about your family all the time off camera.
3 or 4 follows that I was thinking about, but none of them will go well. So let's quickly go to break, and when we come back, quarterbacks, guys throwing the football.
Oh, that's what we were talking about.
Tune in this afternoon to Rotoworld Hoops Fest happening on the NBC Sports YouTube channel beginning at 4 p.m. Eastern. Prepare for the fantasy basketball season with rankings, analysis, and more, ending with the Rotoworld Round Ball Stew mock draft show at 7 p.m. Matthew Berry. I was on that actually. There's another Australian guy on it too.
Really?
Yeah, this guy, Josh Lloyd, who's a friend of mine, kind of. We go back and forth. He's a really good follow on Twitter at redrock_bball. They broke up the Australians though. Yeah, the world couldn't handle two Australians going back to back talking about DeMar DeRozan or whatever. But tune into that.
Tune into that. If you are like Jay Croucher and you like shows about balls going into holes,
come on.
The Hoops Fest is for you. So be sure to check that out. Great coverage for those that play fantasy basketball right here on Rotoworld.com, NBCSportsEdge.com. We are, of course, our company men.
Absolutely. Okay, quarterback love-hate.
Yes.
Tom Brady was the first guy. He looked suspiciously like Tom Brady last week as well. Kind of back on the horse, 385 yards, 3 touchdowns. He was back.
He had Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and Julio Jones back. And what do you know? 25.4 fantasy points, right? In the 4 games since joining Tampa Bay, he's played 4 games against these Atlanta Falcons. He's averaging 28 fantasy points per game, averaging over 358 passing yards per game. He had 4 touchdowns or more in 3 or 4 games. Tampa Bay has the 3rd highest implied total this week as well, per our friends over at BetMGM. Falcons have allowed the 8th most passing yards. It's a bad defense. Tom's there. And, you know, the easiest way for Tom's headlines to shut up is for him to ball out. On the football field, Jake Croucher, get your mind out of the gutter. Don't look at me like that. Tom Brady is going to have a huge game on Sunday. I'm as a top 5 quarterback play.
Yeah.
Even if they get down 28-3, I still think Tom Brady will have a monster game against the Falcons.
Okay. Plus 1,800 to lead the league in passing yards, Tom Brady. I like that. Because it was just back to last year, and that's exactly what you wanted to see. Joe Burrow, he also makes the love list.
Joe Cool.
Yeah, Joe Cool, who, if Zach Taylor ever lets him throw the ball more and not just run Joe Mixon into the line 22 times for 2 yards per carry, as he seems intent on, then the sky's the limit for Mr. Burrow, but you like him this week.
Yeah, I think he's a top 6 play this week. We talked about this in the T. Higgins segment, right? The fact is that Baltimore can't stop anyone in the pass. They've allowed over 300 passing yards in 3 out of the 4 games this year, including to Joe Flacco and Mac Jones. And we think Joe Burrow is better than both those guys from a passing standpoint. Whatever. He's better than both those guys, period. Right? Baltimore is allowing a league-high 315 passing yards per game. In fact, teams facing the Ravens averaging over 44 pass attempts per game. I think Joe Cool throws it early and often. He, much like young Jay Croucher, likes to throw it around. I think he is successful, much like a young Jay Croucher. He has a top 6 play for me on the road at the Ravens. That game, by the way, is the Sunday night game right here on NBC and Peacock. I'm a company man.
It's going to be a good one as well. High total that is sitting right now on BetMGM at 48.5. The line just moved to +3. So that is huge game with huge implications in the AFC North.
By the way, if you go to BetMGM and use the promo code Berry, BERRY, you get a risk-free bet up to $1,000.
There you go.
First-time depositors only. But I'm just saying, just throwing it out there. Again, I like to throw it out there around a little bit too.
That was the easy follow to that.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Next guy, Derek Carr.
I've heard of him.
Not quite the same level as Brady and Burrow, but huge chance to put up stats against the Chiefs. The total in that game is 51, so it's going to be a lot of scoring, a lot of yards, and Derek Carr is on the love list.
I felt like your voice went up a little bit when you said the word scoring, just so you know. It just felt like it was a little...
Scoring?
Scoring? Interesting.
Scoring?
Yeah. It is the highest over-under the slate per our friends at BetMGM. 3 of the last 4 games that he's played against the Chiefs, it has been shootouts. Carr has scored 18 or more fantasy points in those 3 or 4 games. Chiefs allowed 10 passing touchdowns so far this year. That is tied for the most in the NFL. No team in the NFL has given up more passing touchdowns than the Kansas City Chiefs. And in fact, teams facing Kansas City are tied for the 2nd most pass attempts here. I know it's been a lot of Josh Jacobs here, but on the road at Kansas City as a touchdown underdog, I think the Raiders are going to have to throw and throw often. Derek Carr, I think, is a borderline QB1 this week.
Yep, they seem to figure something out against the Broncos, who have a pretty good defense, and the Raiders were still able to score heavily. All right, some others receiving votes. Teddy deep bombs Bridgewater threw it 61 yards in the air to Tyreek Hill last week against the Bengals. Trevor Lawrence, Jameis Winston, and Carson Wentz.
Yeah, Teddy Bridgewater, obviously known for wearing gloves. It's always important to wear gloves, kids, to protect whatever you can. Be safe, safety first, right? Protection is very important. And so you think about what this Miami offense is doing. And so Bridgewater's now had 10 days to prepare, knowing that he's going to be the guy, right? He's coming off the mini bye from last Thursday night. Over 80% of the Dolphins' offensive yards this season have come via the pass. So going against a Jets team that allows passing touchdowns at the 5th highest rate in the NFL, I do think Bridgewater is a viable streamer this week. Trevor Lawrence back home against Houston. Texans allow the 4th most yards per completion this year. I like T. Law as a top 14 or so quarterback. Texans are plucky, but Lawrence does have multiple touchdown passes in 3 or 4 games so far this year. We've talked about Winston. I would like Andy Dalton there as well. I like whoever the starting quarterback is against a Seahawks team that allows the most yards per pass attempt in the NFL, and so far this year is 29th against the pass. And then we talked about Carson Wentz earlier as well. 40 or more pass attempts in every single game this year for Carson Wentz. He is chucking it around. Again, he's much like Jay Croucher as well, just throwing it all over the place, just not caring where it goes, right? But often hitting his targets. Tennessee allows passing touchdowns at the 2nd highest rate. So yes, Carson Wentz, I think, is a viable streamer this year. As bad as Carson Wentz has been in the last 2 games, he's still a top 10 fantasy quarterback in the season.
He heaves it up.
He heaves it up.
Yeah, he's a junk time Carson.
Absolutely.
By the
way, in my single days, I was a junk time guy.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no. Early in the night, no. But
down 30 in the 4th quarter.
Down 30. It's closing time.
Yeah.
It's dark.
MB.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That was my time to shine. Yeah.
What do you think of the nickname T-Law?
T-Law?
It's kind of like a 2 out of 10. I don't think it's happening for T-Law.
It's J-Law, T-Law. I have to work on a nickname for you, and then I'll work on one for Trevor Lawrence as well.
Okay.
Insanely jealous of his hair, though.
Aaron Rodgers, who...
I've heard of him.
A-Rod?
A-Rod, everyone calls him A-Rod.
Doesn't really work. I feel like the A-Rod wore 13 for the Yankees. It doesn't really work for Aaron Rodgers. And neither does really the passing game work that much for Aaron Rodgers this year. It hasn't been great.
Certainly not fantasy-wise. On the season, he's merely quarterback 23. He's had under 17 fantasy points in all 4 games this year, even games in which they have, quote, played well, and games in which they've won. He just hasn't ever crossed 17 fantasy points. He's merely 18th in pass attempts through 4 games, right? They're just, they're much more of a balanced offense. And then you think about the fact that the Packers are the 2nd biggest favorite on the slate. They're minus 8.5 per BetMGM. How much is he going to have to really throw against an offense? We expect them to be up. We don't know what the Giants' offense is going to look like. Daniel Jones did return to practice, but probably not 100% healthy. I don't know. Outside my top 15. I think this is. I think the Packers win this game, but I don't think they don't do it on the arm of Aaron Rodgers.
Yep. And another guy who is probably a better real-life quarterback than fantasy quarterback is Matthew Stafford, who didn't look great for Matthew Stafford against the Niners, and he's on the hate list again. Good luck, Matthew Stafford, staying alive with that offensive line against Micah Parsons.
He's been brutal.
Yeah.
On a per-game basis this year, he's QB 30.
Yeah.
He's QB 30. He has 1 or fewer touchdown passes in 3 of 4 games this year. When you decide to only focus on one wide receiver in your team, that's kind of one of the things that happens. When they've completely ignored half the field, and it's just like, where's Cooper Kupp?
Yeah.
Where's Cooper Kupp? It's weird. Cooper Kupp, I don't know if you went back and watched the film, but there was a series where Cooper Kupp just had to take a break, just a breather, and so he was on the sidelines, and he still got 3 targets from Stafford. It's true. Go back and watch the tape. I'm telling you. He threw it over there.
It's a good bit.
Right. He's sitting there with his pad, and Kupp had to, put it down to catch it because it was coming over there.
It's good content.
Anyway, I appreciate that. Look, Cowboys sometimes they work and sometimes they're T-Law. What are you going to do? What I will say here is that it's not a great matchup for Stafford, who has struggled so far this year. Cowboys allow just 12 fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks this year. They've given up just 3 passing touchdowns total in 4 games. They lead the league in pressure rate. Stafford doesn't do well under pressure. They give up a league-low 5.5 yards per pass attempt, which plays into what the Rams do because they've been dinking and dunking quite a bit as well. I don't know anything that we've seen from Matthew Stafford that makes you feel confident about starting him against the Rams. He comes in at QB 19 for me in Week 5.
Yeah, can't argue with that. To me, this Rams offense right now, it's like an NBA offense that has no three-point shooters.
No.
And like Cooper Kupp is like Jimmy Butler just driving into the lane, and there's like 4 guys protecting the rim, and there's just no spacing. There's no vertical deep threat or anything. Allen Robinson, who isn't getting targeted, but also kind of looks kind of done, where he's not getting separation. I don't think that's just not Stafford not looking at him. I think it's a combination of not looking that way and also just not being the same guy athletically anymore. So
similar.
times.
By the way, Allen Robinson, very similar to your wife when she's around you. Just can't get separation. Just can't get away. Just it is what it is. I understand. Your wife is like a young Allen Robinson.
Yeah, like a young Allen Robinson. Sophia, Allen Robinson, fantastic. All right, we're going to go to break. When we come back, some player props
we're coming back?
Thursday
Do you
Night
think there's a
Football
chance we're coming
with our
back
friends
at all?
at BetMGM if we come
Do you
back.
think they let us finish this show? There's no way. Stop it.
The action never stops at BetMGM, Matthew Berry. Sign up now using bonus code PEACOCK and your first wager is risk-free up to $1,000. Simply download the BetMGM app today or go to betmgm.com and enter bonus code PEACOCK to make your first wager risk-free up to $1,000.
Look, order bonus code Barry. Let's use bonus code Barry. No,
we want the affiliate cut going to the Peacock.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You want the affiliate cut going to like the massive multi-billion-dollar NBC
conglomerate?
Universal
Yeah.
conglomerate instead of your boy Matty?
Matty.
I got 5 kids.
Wow,
Listen,
you've been spreading
America,
around more
use the
than me.
promo code Barry when you go to BetMGM. It's the same offer. Just, who do you love more? Do you love me or the Proud Peacock? That's all I'm asking.
Okay.
You love me more. I appreciate that.
Interesting head-to-head matchup.
Yeah,
the other
well-
head-to-head matchup today, Colts Broncos. These are the most bet props at BetMGM. Melvin Gordon scored the first touchdown, plus 500. Some people think that he's going to be able to hold on the ball to cross the line. Michael Pittman, anytime touchdown scorer, plus 190. And then your guy, Jerry Jeudy, not your guy, over 50.5 receiving yards, minus 115. Those are the most bet on props.
Yeah.
What
I don't love any of those. I guess Pittman anytime touchdown score would be what I would choose right there.
Yep.
The props that I like, Melvin Gordon's already on the hate list here.
Yep.
Ball security issues as well. Melvin Gordon under 57.5 rushing yards at minus 115. Once a season has a Denver running back gone over 60 rushing yards. That was Devontae in Week 10. Week 2, I think it's more of a committee here. Colts, obviously, as we've talked about, allowing the 3rd lowest yards per carry to opposing running back. So Melvin Gordon under 57.5. And I also like Matt Ryan to throw an interception.
Yep.
He's got tied for the second most. He's got 6 on the year, I believe. No, he's got 5. Sorry, he's thrown an interception in 3 or 4 games this year. Denver's got a really good defense. Matt Ryan is not so good. He doesn't have Jonathan Taylor. He's going to have to throw more than he wants to in this game. So I like Matt Ryan to throw an interception at minus 120. Again, 3 out of 4 games this year he's thrown a pick. I say tonight he makes it 4 out of 5.
Yep, he'll be throwing more often as well without Jonathan Taylor to run it 20, 25 times. My favorite bet, also Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan over 1.5 rushing yards.
All right.
Yeah, over 1.5 rushing yards. It's a ridiculous bet. It's so ridiculous, but it's going to win.
Right.
Because he's gone over 9 of his past 11 games. He rushes the ball more than you would expect. And then also, short yardage, no Jonathan Taylor. Matty Ice up the middle.
There you go.
1,
For
2,
just a
3
quick
yards.
Sticks, that's all you need. 1.5 over on that. I think everyone should bet those and use the promo code Barry. Use the promo code Barry at BetMGM. That's all we ask. By the way, we should get you a promo code too. You've got 1 million kids and more coming apparently.
Yeah, promo code -J or whatever. We're going to come up with a nickname.
Anyway, at the moment, the only promo code that's working is promo code Barry. So love-hate column is up on NBC Sports Edge and Rotoworld.com. Rotoworld.com, NBCSportsEdge.com. It is free as it always is. Please go check that out. We are back tomorrow. For Jay Croucher, I'm Matthew Berry. Thank you so much for tuning in. If they let us come back, we will be back tomorrow. All right, good luck tonight. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. It is closing time for the happy hour. We will talk to you tomorrow. Peace out. Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBC Sports and Rotoworld.com. Just want to thank you so much for watching what you just watched, or at least being too lazy to click out of it after the autoplay just kept it going. So either way, thank you so much for just letting it scroll by your screen. And now I'd like to ask you respectfully, okay? Respectfully, please subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel for the latest NFL news, fantasy headlines from Rotoworld, and betting analysis from NBC Sports Edge.